Good day, viewer, and welcome back to Below the Curve Gaming. So, it's been a long time. We have moved house and an awful lot has happened, but we are back with a brand new video featuring the new Steel Phalanx from Operation Black Wind against the USAriadna. We've got a new gaming mat, which thankfully has streets at diagonal angles, so no direct fire lanes in the same way that we've previously experienced. We'll be using the Ariadna sort of forward base from Antonicitis Workshop, RIP, and a few other bits to have a sort of inner city complex, kind of like, looks a wee bit like a sort of office building type setup. We're playing Capture and Protect from ITS Season 13, so we'll have a motorised bounty hunter each. There will be a beacon that we have to access and then look the contents out of. So here is mine, and Ben's is round on top of this building. Now, we know that really you should not have beacons up on top of buildings like this. However, we'd set the board up and it was going to be a bit of a faff, so we agreed for the purposes of the game we would just play with it up there. So we'll be back soon with the breakdown of the armies and the deployments. Following a disastrous game recently, Ben has chosen to go first rather than second, so I picked my deployment zone and had Ben set up first. See you in a minute.
Hello, it's Ben, and this is my USAriadna Force for Capture and Protect. I've done quite a bit of painting in the last week, so I wanted to take the excuse to use some of the new painted models. So the force is 2 combat groups. First combat group shown now is a Grunt core team, which is a Grunt Lieutenant, Grunt Forward Observer, Rosie Monroe, a 112, and Wild Bill. I've just finished painting him, so he still needs a wee bit of work on the base. Then there's a Dozer and a Total Reaction bot. I have got 2 Foxtrots, one with a sniper and a camo token behind, and one with a boarding shotgun, camo token behind. And just hidden out of view is a hard case with 2 camo tokens. I think it's a decoy, so it gets 2. So this is Combat Group 2. Which is a USARF Harry, which is the Unknown Ranger with AP Spitfire, a Marauder Paramedic with Heavy Flamethrower, and a Marauder with Sniper Rifle +1 Burst. I then have a War Driver, which is the DERS Hacker model. I have an Airborne Ranger. Now this one has the submachine gun, the model's got the rifle, but I haven't finished painting the submachine gun one yet. And then the Maverick Biker is standing in for my bike recon. I do have the actual bounty hunter on bike, but I thought it would be more apt to use the Maverick model. I have Sabotage as my Intel Com card, and it's got the wee cog icon, so it should be worth 2 points if I can achieve it and haven't hit 10 victory points. So I'll come back with my deployment shortly. So, starting right to left with the US deployment, I have the Core Fire Team, which is the Grunt, the 112, Rosie, then over here the Forward Observing Grunt and Wild Bill. Then I have the War Driver, I have the Harry Team, which is the Unknown Ranger, the Marauder Paramedic, and the Marauder with Sniper Rifle back here. Then I have the Uralon, I think it is, remote, and the Dozer is over there. And then I have, now this is the real one in the stairways, and then the decoy, which is the hard case, infiltrating forward. Then I've got the prone Sniper Rifle Foxtrot, camo token, and then the boarding shotgun Foxtrot camo token. And I've kept my bounty hunter back as my last model to deploy.
So here we have my Steel Phalanx. So it's very much the army from Operation Blackwind. It's all 7 models that come in the box, with some extra models that I was able to pick up, a combination of Firestorm Games, who had quite a lot of stuff going very cheap, and also a couple of really nice folk on Facebook who sold me some particularly needed key pieces very, very cheaply. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you again. So the army is led by the Hoplite here with the HMG. So Hoplites, their stats are a bit deceiving. They're the new troops for heavy infantry for Steel Phalanx. They're only armour 3, physical and willpower 13. They do have +1 inch to the dodge and +2 close combat, but they're also natural born warriors with total immunity and ECM -3 to protect them from some of the enemy's sneakier tricks. This one has a heavy machine gun. The other option, I believe, has a multi-rifle, a multi-marksman rifle or something similar. We have 4 Forakite. Forakite are my medium line infantry. They're armour 3, not bad stats. I've gone for a forward observer for submachine gun. I've gone for a regular with a submachine gun, a paramedic with a submachine gun, and I've gone for one with a Führerbach. So obviously they're going to fire team together. Steel Phalanx fire teams are capped at 4 models, unfortunately, so no +3 ballistic skill, with good reason, I hasten to add. I do also have a light rocket launcher in one of them, mainly for the reactive turn, to be honest. We have the Agima marksman with his sniper rifle, and he's got surprise attack and MSV2 hidden deployment, so we're aiming to sort of stick him probably over here, can't quite see, in here, and then we're going to try and pick off some Ben's key parts. We've got an Ekdromos hacker, which is a drop troop, chain rifle +1 burst, that's particularly unpleasant. Now, the hacker is going to be very limited use in this game, but it will allow me, hopefully, and this is a plan, to drop down over here and very quickly take the beacon. Has a double action close combat weapon, which is always a bonus. The chain rifle should make an absolute mess of any of Ben's stuff. Ekdromos are absolutely fantastic, very generously statted, only armour 2, but martial arts at level 3, courage, parachutist, combat jump, stealth, super jump, and +1 inch dodge, not to be sniffed at. We've got one of the new, and this is going to be pronounced wrong, Thyrios. So a Thyrios is a forward deploying troop. It's this lady here. And they've got submachine gun again. They've got decharges, they've got mines. I have taken the mine layer profile, so we'll be dropping down a nice shock mine to try and chase Ben away. Then we've got Pandora. Now, spoiler alert for Blackwind, Pandora seems to be at it, I think is the only words, and sort of playing off multiple sides. She's got no wound incapacitation. She's got an upgraded hacking device with 0 pain. Not much use in this battle, but never mind. Pitcher, Pulsar, Flash Pulse with +1 burst. More to the point, she's got a medkit with +1 burst and a viral pistol with +1 burst. She has dodge -6, which is huge. And then combat group 2, and this is a group that I'm relying on to do everything. We've got Hippolyta. We've got 2 Myrmidons that she's going to fire team up with. And then we've got 2 of the net rods, which I will drop down basically at the back of my board somewhere to generate orders and pray that she goes on an Amazonian rampage through Ben's entire army. So we'll be back in just a second with my deployment. So we've deployed the force. So we have the Thorakite over here. So the running forward one here is a paramedic. The one that's standing back and firing is a forward observer. This one needs to turn to face forward. That's one with the light rocket launcher. Then we have our Führerbach. We have Hippolyta, and we have 2 Myrmidons here. Pandora, sorry, I just realised I must have knocked right away. Pandora is standing here against the car, just sort of covering things, and if Ben attempts any tricks to take the beacon, I will viral pistol his character in the face. we have the Thyreos here. Now, there is a camel token away over here. So we'll see how that goes. And then if we just come around here, as I said, the Agema Marksman is hidden deployment in here. So we've got the hoplite held back. The hoplite will probably cover over here with its HMG. I don't see much point in covering this side. There doesn't seem to be anything really there. We will have to be careful of the total reaction tractor mule with the rocket pod. And around here there is a Marauder fire team with an unknown ranger. That could be a wee bit problematic. And there's a grunt fire team over here. Now I'm fairly confident the grunt fire team's not got a huge amount of heavy weaponry. So if I don't present him with any targets, he's going to have to burn orders just to move them up to make them useful. My Ectoramos will drop down. We do not intend to do that in the first turn unless stuff goes seriously wrong, however. And my net rods I'm going to try and land in here. My classified objective card is Extremis Recovery. It's a lot better than Rescue, which I drew previously. Rescue requiring the Kazovac state, which I just found to be a particularly stressful experience. So, we'll be back in a second to start the game.
So here are the held back models. So I've deployed the Bounty Hunter with Red Fury and a monofilament weapon on its booty roll. And Martin has deployed his biker, which he had forgotten to deploy, and a hoplite in contact with that card there. So we'll come back at the end of turn 1 for Ariadna. So here we are at the end of the Ariadna turn 1. So firstly, the fire team moved up, and quite a few orders spent on them. They got to here, and the forward observer traded with the Thrasius, and she dodged, but then on the second attempt I managed to target her, which we'll come back to in a wee second. Then the fire team continued to move up. Wild Bill assumed control and shot and wounded the hoplite with his contender. There's been some dodging at that side as well. The Bounty Hunter spent its irregular order, moved up and traded shots with the hoplite, but no damage was caused. Then on the centre here, the camel token popped up and revealed itself to be a Foxtrot sniper and shot at the Fuhrerback and light rocket launcher. Managed to kill the light rocket launcher, however was taken out by the Fuhrerback, so she is dead. The other camel token that was around here moved up onto those stairs. The war driver moved up into base contact with the objective and then realised it was the enemy objective that she needed to get to, so she has moved into the building there. I should have perhaps read over the rules a wee bit more carefully. I spent the Tactical Awareness Order from Pool 2 on the Harry, and the Unknown Ranger moved up. There's nothing to shoot at him, so not much has happened there. I should say Martin did pull 2 orders out of my Pool 2, which is why I only had the 2 regular orders there. With the Thrasius being targeted, I spent an order on the Urlan, which blew her away with a guided shot. And then I spent an order on the Dozer to move him up. This prompted a dodge from the Bounty Hunter. Over here, the decoy and the hard case moved up. The hard case revealed itself and had a face-to-face with Hippolyta. I did hit her with my rifle, however, we then realised Hippolyta's mimetism, so no damage was caused anyway. So that is the end of the Ariadna turn. So I've lost the Foxtrot with the sniper rifle, Martin's lost Thyreos, and the Phorikyites with the light rocket launcher. So we'll come back at the end of the Aleph turn 1.
So the Steel Phalanx first turn was the very definition of a mixed bag. Little bit of housekeeping before we start. I forgot to deploy the biker, as Ben said. However, I then placed it before he deployed his model it rolled up a double action close combat weapon. So I started activating the fire team in a rather ballsy attempt to assassinate the Unknown Ranger and the Uralan tractor mule. I then discovered the Unknown Ranger had as many shots as I did at a higher ballistic skill. This proved to be unsuccessful. I did manage to take down the Uralan with the Führerbach. However, in the process, the Führerbach was unsurprisingly dropped by the Unknown Ranger. We tried to move the fire team of Doom, aka Hippolyta and the Myrmidons, through this building. Hippolyta got shot in the face by the hard case with a tactical bow at point blank range. I promptly rolled, I think, a 2 and a 4 on my saves, and she was rendered unconscious. The next Myrmidon moved in an attempt to assassinate the hard case, and also was shot in the face, despite having mimetism -6, and rolled similar numbers, so he was unconscious. However, he did take down the hard case with a chain rifle. The final Myrmidon moved up and moved again. Then he managed to pull off in extremis recovery, so that I passed my objective, taken out the hard case, continued moving around, and attempted another ballsy assassination run with a chain rifle, with absolutely no success. From the main group, the Agema marksman revealed himself. Ben successfully dodged with the dozer, which pretty much was my assassination run to stop him repairing the bloomin' tractor mule. I did take a wound off the Unknown Ranger, however, and was very lucky to survive the unopposed return fire from the Marauder. The marksman has no mimetism, so this is likely to be his final involvement in the game. Just put that back there quickly. The fire team, once the Führerbach was dropped, I burnt tokens into the medic, who survived 2 shots to the face from the Unknown Ranger, moved all the way around and resurrected Hippolyta somewhere inside this building. The hoplite nearly died after attempting to outshoot Wild Bill, discovering that Ben hit on a 19 or lower, was very nearly very fatal if it hadn't been for total immunity. However, I did manage to get the bounty hunter into combat, and as she has a para close combat weapon -6, is now going to attempt to subdue him with what is effectively a taser. So we're happy enough with that. We didn't actually take anything out, I don't think, in the whole turn, but we have successfully completed an objective. So it's on to Ben's second turn now.
So we're at the end of the Ariadna Turn 2. And quite a bit's happened. I started by moving on the tactical awareness, the Unknown Rangers fire team up. They shot and killed the Myrmidon here, and also shot at the Agema marksman, but nothing much happened there. I then spent a second order switching to the sniper as the team leader, who exchanged further shots with the marksman and dropped it unconscious. This cleared the path for the dozer to move up, winding his way round the building and into contact with the rubbish tip, which he deployed his decharge to, scoring me sabotage. As it's a cog, that will give me 2 victory points. I then spent 3 orders with my camo token that was on the stairs to move it round here. It exchanged shots, unveiling itself to be a boarding shotgun equipped Foxtrot, exchanged some shots with the Forikite, who was there dropping it unconscious, and then got into contact with the beacon and has successfully gained the beacon for my side. Over here, things weren't so good. Wild Bill ended up getting himself eventually, I think, parried by the close combat weapon on the bounty hunter. The bounty hunter herself moved up, or my bounty hunter moved up, exchanged some shots with the hoplite and the bounty hunter that was in contact, eventually killing the bounty hunter and dropping the hoplite unconscious. And then my final orders, I brought on using parachutist, the Airborne Ranger, who has moved up unopposed to guard this doorway. So it's the end of my turn. I think we're sitting at 1 victory point to Martin, and I believe I've got 4 victory points, 2 for holding a beacon at the end of my turn and 2 for my sabotage. Martin's not got too many models left. There's the 2 net rods, Pandora, a Phorikites who's actually in this building but sitting on top of it just for ease, and Hippolyta, who is inside the building as well. I believe that's everything that he currently has. So we'll come back at the end of the Aleph turn 2.
So Steel Phalanx turn 2 has been a bit of a disaster. I started and lost a lieutenant, and I'd lost a bounty hunter, which was rather boldly tying up Ben's entire flank. I tried to move Pandora around to tie up the bag carrier, as it were, moved around the wrong side, coming round here rather than here, and this allowed the Unknown Ranger to shoot as well. I rolled a 19 on my dodge, and the Unknown Ranger managed to score a double hit despite the -6, and as a result I was taken down. I moved Hippolyta out of the building. I opened up with a breaker combi rifle and the paramedic and the sniper, but all I succeeded in doing was driving the paramedic back indoors. I charged across the open ground and monofilamented the Unknown Ranger, and that was that. Moved into combat and promptly bought a heavy pistol round to the face. Despite critting on a 13 plus, managed to roll a 4, Ben rolled a 6 to hit, and that was the end of Hippolyta. This meant that in order to not be in retreat, I had to drop down my Ectromos. Now, I'm fairly sure I can land on top of a flat building, didn't land in contact with any terrain. However, Ben passed the dodge and has turned the war drive around to face. So it's the end of the turn, the victory points haven't changed, but it's looking like it's all going to be over for the Steel Phalanx. If I lose one more model, I will automatically be in retreat.
So here we are at the end of the Ariadna turn 3. So firstly, I spent an order on the war driver who fought against the Ectromos, and we exchanged fire. I fired twice with my boarding shotgun, taking it out, and it shot me with the chain rifle, taking her out. We're out of unconscious tokens, so I had to just use wound markers to mark it. I then utilised the Airborne Ranger, who spent 2 orders, firstly to move up to the steps, and then secondly to move into the doorway and exchange fire with the Myrmidon and the Phorikite round the corner. She managed to take out the Phorikite, however the Myrmidon passed its save and she died to its chain rifle in revenge. I then had 1 order left at this point in order group 2, so I spent it on the fire team to move them further up. They were out of range. The Myrmidon has subsequently dodged into that position, so there was nothing to be seen at the point. I then moved into order group 1, and utilising the Dozer, who was one of the 3 models I had about, I started moving him around to the other side of the building and tried to take out the Myrmidon from behind. Unfortunately, it passed its dodge roll at -3, and I failed to hit with any of my shots. And it subsequently, in a second order, chain rifled the Dozer. The Dozer is actually on the ground floor building, but I've put him at the top just for ease of access. So he's been taken out. The Myrmidon is still currently fighting. I then spent an irregular order on the Bounty Hunter, which moved up and took out the 2 net rods. One was taken out entirely, and the other one is unconscious. I then, with all the orders I had left, tried to cancel the immobilised A on Wild Bill to get the fire team moving. Unfortunately, he failed all his fizz rolls. But I didn't really have anything left to do with the orders, The only model that could have potentially used them was the Foxtrot with boarding shotgun, but I didn't particularly want to move her. So that's the end of the Ariadna Turn. So currently I'm winning on victory points, but we'll see what Martin can do in his final turn. He will be in retreat, but he does have 3 command tokens left, so you should be able to cancel that on the Myrmidon and see what you can do with the Myrmidon.
So here we are at the end of the final Steel Phalanx turn. I had 1 model and I was in loss of lieutenant, but the model had frenzy. It was a Myrmidon, so it gained impetuous, having killed something. So I removed retreat using one of my command tokens, moved the Myrmidon forward and chain rifled the remains of the Harris team here. However, Ben passed both saves. I passed the save from the heavy flamethrower in return. But my main order, my irregular order as it were, I moved into combat with a sniper, managed to land a solid hit with my double action close combat weapon, and then watched Ben roll a 14 and a 20 to shrug off the damage, and I failed the save to the heavy flamethrower and then failed the second save for continuous damage, so that was me dead. At the end of the game, I had 1 point for achieving in extremis recovery. Ben had 7 points. He had 2 because he had completed sabotage, which gave him 1, plus it had a cog symbol on it. He got 4 from taking my beacon and holding it at the end of 2 of his turns, and 1 because I hadn't got to his beacon. So at the end of the game, it's 7-1 to the USAriadna. So we'll be back in just a minute to give our thoughts on the armies and how the game went from the point of view of each faction. So, Steel Phalanx obviously were not much of a success. However, there's quite a few things I've taken from this game. So firstly, and where I think the army really suffered, was the fact that I was attempting to use it built out of the Blackwind box. And so I immediately knew I was going to suffer some serious limitations. My first limitation was I only had 1 lieutenant option, which was the hoplite. Now the problem with this is a hoplite comes with a series of very useful profiles. It has a 36 point specialist operative profile, which comes with a multi-rifle, pulsar and drop bears, and is actually really desirable. It also has an engineer profile, which is what I really needed for this game, to make sure that I had the full gambit of specialists in case of drawing a particular card. Because I was then limited to taking it as a lieutenant with the HMG, I felt it actually very much affected my game plan. It was my only big gun, apart from the Furibach, and so I had to use it to anchor the flank. I should have realised that the US fire team, led by Wild Bill, has been a staple of Ariadna gameplay for several years now, and I should have realised when I saw it heading towards me that 1 very averagely started heavy infantry, even with a high caliber weapon, was not going to be able to shut it down. When I opened up on Ben in my turn, he was hitting 2 dice back at me with far higher to hit odds than I had with my 3 or 4 dice against him. Also, because I was using what came in the box, I had an Agima marksman. I really don't rate the Agima. Yes, they have hidden deployment and surprise attack. However, they don't have mimetism. Now, against Unknown Ranger, that's a bit of a moot point. However, against other troops, mimetism is particularly important, particularly for stopping people from picking you off with lucky hits. And I lost it, I think, to a lucky rifle round. I might have actually got it wrong when I was talking through earlier what happened. I find Agima at over 30 points and 1.5 SWCs is not particularly desirable. If I was to take it again, I would downgrade him to the multi-rifle or the multi-marksman rifle instead of the multi-sniper rifle, saving on SWCs and points. Also, I had Pandora and the Thyreos. Now, Pandora is very good, and I think the Thyreos is very good, but not in this list. So part of the problem was I was facing against Ariadna, I had multiple hackers who actually were very little use. Ben had one hackable model, and if he hadn't taken the war driver, would have had none. So I was paying for abilities, particularly on Pandora with the zero pain upgrade, that I got no benefit out of. Now, this was obviously, like I said, I was using the models I had, and I made the list and chose the game ahead of time, and then Ben got the luxury, as it were, of choosing his army. Now, this is exactly the same as what would happen at a tournament, where you could turn up with an army list written out and then discover that your opponent was unhackable, or you in some way weren't able to benefit from it. I found Pandora to be a little bit confusing as to what she was expected to do. And I think against a heavy infantry, heavy army, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Where I could be chucking forward a picture and then hacking out of it and protecting myself against opponents' info war with zero pain should be very beneficial. However, against the Ariadna, and part of it was that I moved her the wrong way and unnecessarily chewed 2 rounds I didn't need to. But against the Ariadna, she was of far more limited use. The Ectomos, I paid points for a hacker that I actually didn't need to pay. I could have just taken it as an Ectomos core trooper. Hippolyta was very unlucky. I think Hippolyta is absolutely fantastic. I was convinced Hippolyta had 1 wound and no wounding cap, but apparently she doesn't. She's now 2 wounds. So if anybody wants to comment as to whether maybe this has changed recently, please do. But I think her and the Myrmidons could and should have done an awful lot better. Ben, to his credit, he played very well with the hard case and he got some good dice rolls, and that hard case took care of 2 of my models and very nearly gubbed the 3rd one as well, completely shutting down my entire strategy, which was let Hippolyta do all the hard work, because that's what she's there for. In another game, I think that fire team would have been an absolute beast. The Thorakai, or Thorikite, I deployed poorly, or by which I mean I forgot to move them. When I moved one of the models up, didn't move the others, and so didn't have them in cover. Now, whilst it wasn't of much impact, it's that sort of thing that conceivably could have lost me models if Ben had come on from a side or had drop trooped something in. I left him and Pandora standing in the middle of a road. Very, very poor. So the Steel Phalanx I can see a lot of potential in. I think what I would do is I would replace the Agima either by downgrading him or replacing him entirely. I would change out the Hoplite for the cheaper option. I would keep the Thorikite fire team. I quite like them. I would probably replace the Ectomos with just a regular Ectomos if I was playing Ariadna. But I think against anybody else, being able to drop a hacker down is very powerful. The Thyreos is one I'm a little unsure about. I'm not quite sure what she's meant to do. So I forgot to place her mine, which didn't help, and then we placed it. The mine incidentally went off and we forgot to record it. Ben passed a save on his Marauders, so it was a moot point. I think what I would do is deploy her better. She also has a profile of a boarding shotgun, which I think is actually far, far more preferable. I found certainly the ability to switch between hit mode and templates, as Ben did against me, was absolute clutch in certain situations. The Myrmidons I would keep as is, Hippolyta I would keep as is, the fire team I would keep as is. The problem would be that I need to find a lieutenant, so I could replace Pandora and the Agima. Points-wise, I believe that would give me about enough points to buy Hector, and I think that this army, without the Agima and without a Pandora, but with Hector, would have been a very, very powerful force. I really rate the net rods. I know some people don't, but just spending 12 points to generate 2 orders in a list where you already know what your list is going to be doing, and that is conducting whole-scale slaughter with a couple of key pieces. Things like net rods are what you want. You will never accidentally spend an order in a net rod because you can't. And so I think that they're absolute gold dust, because you're going to drop troop them down. You're probably going to want them against your own table edge, behind a piece of terrain, and if they and if they fail the physical roll, then you're just going to place them behind a piece of terrain in contact with the table edge. I think they're really, really good, and I know that the Combined Armies versions are very popular as well. So we'll be back in a second for Ben's video.
So from the USAriadna side, it was quite a successful game. I managed to, I think, get a good showing out of a lot of the choices I made for the list, and also got to try out some stuff I hadn't had a chance to use in the past. I've been trying to just use painted models, so until they were painted up I was kind of hanging fire from using them. So particularly the new models I'll go over first, and then a kind of thoughts on the list in general. So the hard case was one of the models I painted up first, and it was more just a chance to actually paint the model because it looks pretty cool. But it was quite successful in the game. I went between the use of the rifle and the tactical bow, depending on the different scenarios. And I think the rifle's probably preferable to the light shotgun version, which is a couple of points cheaper. I think the 3 shots of the rifle versus the 1 of the tactical bow can mean in certain situations it can be key. I think the bonus of him having stealth and the kind of decoy camouflage meant that because it was the first time using it, maybe it kind of was a bit of mind games for Martin, seeing 2 camo markers that were both moving at the same time. I think he made a comment that he thought it was werewolves or the like, which not quite in this list, but and also slightly too big, but that kind of way of not quite sure what to expect from them. So that was quite successful from my point of view. The 2 foxtrots were both painted up in advance. Now, the sniper rifle, although she died early, she was key in taking out the Feuerbach Forikite, because that was one of Martin's longer range guns and potentially would have spelled some devastation upon particularly the Unknown Rangers fire team if it was going to have to move up through that gauntlet. So although she died, I think she was key in how the game swung in my favour. The boarding shotgun was obviously got the objective and the beacon and was able to take out Pandora. So it was pretty useful too. So the other models that I'd painted up for the game, the Airborne Ranger, I got a bit of success out of her in moving her up and submachine gunning the kind of stragglers in the building. And also she was just coming on at the right time where things were swung in my favour, and she gave me a good kind of either ARO piece if anything came out of that building, or somebody who could then try and move into it and clear it out when there was few models left. The War Driver, I've obviously been using the Hahu model instead, so it was nice just to paint it up. And the other thing was the sniper rifle for the Marauders, which was quite successful as well with a few of the face-to-face rolls. I think it took out the Agima marksman and possibly some of the other Forikite's fire team. I can't quite remember. So in general, I quite liked the Wild Bill and the Grunt fire team. I think that there was a good balance between the Forward Observer, Rosie with the light shotgun and light rocket launcher, and then the 112 for potential to get things back up. The Lieutenant, obviously, in the Grunt didn't particularly offer much, but then she wasn't expecting to. The Unknown Rangers fire team, not quite sure if I would go for that composition again. It didn't do badly. I think it's got a gunfighter in the case of the Unknown Ranger. It's got a specialist in the paramedic, and it's got a defensive piece in the sniper rifle. +1 burst, although I believe the +1 burst only is useful in the active turn. So maybe not as defensive as taking something like the missile launcher or heavy rocket launcher, which I think is the Marauder one, and then the missile launcher is the Minuteman. They can both go into the list. I might have the weapons the wrong way round. Other than that, though, the Uralan was quite useful. Particularly quite chuffed to have finally, after multiple games of attempting it, to have got a targeted state off and then been able to fire the rockets. In the past, I've kind of not quite managed the targeting through it, so I was quite chuffed with that. I think there's a few things I want to still paint for the list. I've got a couple more Mavericks that I want to paint up, and I managed to get hold of the Desperados, so I want to get them done. Not sure if I would go for a full biker list, but the idea of having a couple more faster moving things could be quite beneficial. As well as finishing off both the Minutemen and the Marauder packs. I've got, I think, 2 out of 4 of the Marauders painted, and I think I'm just 1 out of 4 of the Minutemen, so I need to get them finished off, and then the 2nd Airborne Ranger, and then on to Van Zandt from there. So a few more things to get painted. Hopefully I'll have some more for the next game. So thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and any comments, questions or suggestions, if you pop in the comment section below. Thanks.